on different spirit animals or power animals. We were getting a lot of questions tonight from the listeners about what does this animal mean or that animal mean, and I've got full articles on over 20 different animals on my website explaining exactly that.
Wonderful. And you're listening to the Paranormal Lounge on the D.T.M. Wicked Radio Network. Chris.
Okay, I guess I get the next one, huh?
Yes, sir.
You share how certain animals show up over and over again in your waking life and in dreams. What is synchronicity, and how important is synchronicity to the story?
Yeah, we were talking about this in the last hour, and how synchronicity originated with Carl Jung, and bless his heart, and all the great work that he did. And he explained synchronicity very simply as two events that are related in meaning, but not related by cause and effect. So me having a dream with my babysitter who's passed away coming to visit me, and then the next morning seeing an owl and remembering that she had owls all over her house. Those two events are absolutely related in meaning, but not by cause and effect. Not at least as far as we can test with the rational or scientific means. So that is what synchronicity is, and it has so much. We so much want proof of the divine or proof that our prayers are being answered, and I think synchronicity is really the closest we're ever going to come to having that proof.
And what about the types of animals that show up for us? We know what the hawks mean, and we know we've talked a little bit about that. How about the meaning of some other animals?
Yeah. So I always kind of have, off the top of my head, certain keynotes for animals, and I encourage people to start to study animals and have that too. But you can obviously get books or go to my website to learn some deeper meanings. But I had a couple deer wander behind my house earlier today, and deer are about gentle alluring to new adventure. They definitely signify gentleness in their quiet nature. And if we think about the legend of King Arthur and following the white stag into the forest, there's so many stories of hunters following deer or certain stag or deer or doe or white hind into the forest, and they end up on this whole different adventure in this whole different world than they had initially expected. So that would be deer. Mouse is about seeing God in the details. Mouse only has what is right in front of his or her nose at that given moment, and their world is very, very small, but it reminds us of that brilliance of being able to see the sacred in the mundane, in the most mundane, small details of our life. And let's see, what would be some other, do you have any others that you'd like to know about?
Anybody in the chat room have an animal that shows up for them in dreams or in real life? Oh, rabbits. Someone's asking about rabbits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a post on my website about them. I could write about rabbits in a whole book, really. They're fascinating. But the first real quick association with rabbits is we think of Alice in Wonderland and that white rabbit that leads her down the rabbit hole. So rabbits show up often when we are starting to embark on a new adventure in our life and go into the unknown, and typically into the mystical or spiritual realms of the unknown, going down the wormhole. And so there's definitely some trepidation that comes along with rabbit energy. If you read about them in medicine cards, they talk about fear associated with rabbit. But what's the inverse or converse of fear but courage? So there is also bravery in with rabbit medicine. And I always like to refer people back to either childhood stories that they knew about animals or myths. So if we look at, there's the Velveteen Rabbit, so the story about the rabbit that was a stuffed animal, but he was loved so much by the child who had him that he actually turned into a real animal. So there's an element of magic that's with rabbits too.
We have another one in the chat room. They want to know about bears.
Yeah, those are a lot of people like bears, and they're a popular one. Bears are associated most commonly with the West on the medicine wheel. And the West is the place of fall, of autumn, And that's the time when the trees are letting go of their leaves, so it's a reminder of letting go. And it's a time when we start to turn inward and the bears turn inward and go into the cave. So the aspect of hibernation with bears is pretty key. The fact that they go into the cave for an extended period of time and completely shut down, and their heart rate slows and they go to sleep. So they turn inward into the inner world and go into the void, into the mystery or the unconscious. So having a bear around or working with bear medicine is really about going into the cave and being introspective and surrendering into the mystery and the unconscious.
And our friend Kathy wants to know about the red-tailed fox.
Okay. Foxes I also have written about on my website. There's a number of different species we have here in North America, but foxes are often associated with camouflage. They are also tricksters. Think about how many stories we know of foxes raiding the hen house. So they can have a little bit of that trickster energy, and not as much as we know with coyotes, but still there's some of that element there. They're also really strongly associated with the feminine, which is really an interesting piece.
Absolutely. And finally, the one that everyone loves, the wolf.
Yeah, Wolf the Witness. I had the experience about a little over a month ago, maybe a couple of months ago, of going to a wolf sanctuary. And when I went in, they had a 135-pound full-blooded Alaskan wolf in this sanctuary, and I got to go in the pen with him. And the woman who is his caretaker had me kneel down, and he came in at me. His huge face came right in at mine and he rubbed his head over my head and his whole body over me. It was greeted like a wolf, and I never, ever thought I would have that experience in my life, and it was very overwhelming. So much of the time wolves are associated with that intensity, because we think about Little Red Riding Hood and all the stories about wolves prowling around the perimeter of towns, but they carry so much wisdom. The young ones in a wolf pack learn from the elders. They learn by watching, and that's the key part about wolves, is that they are very good at being a witness, and they help us learn how to contact and relate with our own inner guru. So not only is the wolf a teacher, but the wolf reflects our own inner teacher and is a reminder that we don't need to go to anyone else for the information. We already have it within.
There's a wonderful story about a young Native American boy who goes to his grandfather one day and says, "Grandfather, tell me how my brother, sister, and I got our names." And the grandfather said, "Well, when your elder brother was born, we opened the flap of the teepee and looked outside, and there was a beautiful brown bear standing tall, so we named him Standing Bear. And then when your sister was born, we opened the flap of the teepee and looked outside, and there was a golden fawn who was running by, so we named her Running Fawn." And then the grandfather said, and why do you ask these questions, Humping Dog?
Victor.
I'm sorry. We have to throw a little bit of this irreverent humor in once in a while. It's just
great.
It's just part of our makeup here. In your book, Gracious Wild, you talk about teaching through story, but most people don't have the chance to live on an island or train red-tailed hawks. How would you suggest that people access the healing power that you have and the ability to teach through story?
Well, time out in nature, like we were talking a while ago, is really a good place to start. So many people, when they get into time out in nature, they're going with an agenda. They're going to hike up that mountain and back down, or run 5 miles, or get their dog out and walk. But if you can go out in nature just to be out in nature, but you start to have these experiences, and once you start to notice, they speed up, just like synchronicities do. I think the same thing happens with encounters with wildlife. Once we start to notice the wild animals around us, even in our city parks, it can be squirrels, it can be rock doves or pigeons or red-tailed hawks or herons or Canada goose. Those are all very familiar in our city parks. We start to have more and more of those kind of experiences. So just, trusting that and then telling those stories and looking for the meaning behind the encounter and listening for the meaning behind the encounter. So many times, we can rationally think through what it means, but if we sit with the question and not be so quick to answer it with one short answer, we get a whole story that starts to unfold over the weeks or months following a certain encounter, where we'll meet someone and they'll tell us a story, or we'll come across a book that has a story about that particular animal that really speaks to us. And it starts to weave into a whole tapestry that is this really, really rich story versus what might happen if we jump to a quick answer right away.
Well, Stacy, what about what's the meaning behind city rats, number one, and number two, white mice? Because I've had an encounter with a white mouse that lasted about a month, and what do you think that's about?
Well, anytime you see a white animal, I think it's of decent significance, especially if it's a white animal that's usually colored. So like mice are, wild mice especially, are typically brown, right? So to see a white one is of significance. In shamanic culture, there is lore or legend that a white animal is indicative of somebody with a shamanic gift. So if you're seeing a lot of white animals, you're encountering somebody who has a shamanic gift. That could be one explanation, but then once again, that's kind of the short, quick explanation. The color white is symbolic of spirituality and purity. So when I see an animal that's that color, I look at the qualities of that animal. We're looking at, with mouse, looking at seeing God in the details. And here you have a white mouse. It would be really important to look at how can you become even more essential or more clear or pure in your ability to let everything else fall away and just be with the sacred in any given moment, even when you're doing the dishes.
And Chris, how does that make you feel about what happened with you and the white mouse after that beautiful explanation?
Well, I'm not buying it.
I'm not sure what happened, so.
I'll tell you what happened real quick. I have a snake, and not a big one, but I have a nice snake, and I was bringing my mice home to feed to my snake, and the little bastard got out of my car, and for a friggin' month, this mouse tortured me. I mean, I'd be driving, would bite my pinky, and, we were trying to catch it. It jumped. Now, I know you're going to think this is a joke. I was on one side of the car. My brother was on the other side of the car. We see the mouse. It makes like a superfly snooker leap at my brother. Hit him in the penis. He fell backwards, almost went over the friggin' railing that was next to my driveway. Okay, you think this is a joke. It's not a joke. It was a friggin' psycho rat, white mouse. And I dove in the car one time to catch him. I got stuck under the steering wheel with my legs sticking out. Everybody's laughing at me. The friggin' mouse ran right up my arm. I couldn't catch him. He tortured me. He tortured me for a month. I don't know what else to say about it.
Well, Stacy, give us your interpretation of Chris's experience.
Okay, so we'll keep going with this. So if you think about a car and dream symbolism, if you look up cars and dream symbolism books, cars are often indicative of our motivation. So, it'd be interesting to hear you have this little mouse reminding you about seeing God in the details in where you're motivated. Are you I look at, how much time are you spending getting into the details of things and that's what you're doing on the show, is really delving in pretty deep on a detailed level with people about what's going on in the spiritual world, spiritual plane, or in the sacred, with the sacred. So, but isn't it funny when they come and just, or we have one in our house and we're like, it's hard not to get super frustrated with them. But I think it almost it just amplifies the message and makes it even louder.
And Chris, as I shared with you the very first time you shared that story on Second Sight, in the Hindu culture, in the Hindu religion, the god Ganesha, who's the elephant-headed god, is accompanied by mice. Those are his friends. And those are his.
Right? Doesn't he ride a mouse too? I think.